I was 16, deeply absorbed in my architectural sketches, trying to block out the noise around me. But then I heard my mother's voice, sharp and cutting through the stillness. "You're a failure, Mark. This is my legacy. My hotel." I immediately rushed to the stairs and froze when I saw him, my dad. Mark looking drained and worn out, the weight of exhaustion on him. At his feet lay a suitcase. His eyes met mine, and before I could say anything, he pulled me into a tight embrace. "I'm sorry, Betla," he whispered. "I can't stay here." And just like that, he was gone. The sound of the front door slamming shut echoed in the silence, leaving me and my younger sister, Mia, standing there in a stillness that seemed louder than any argument. Have you ever felt like an outsider in your own home? Share your story in the comments below. Let me tell you about my family. My grandmother, Sharon, is something of a legend. She started with just one roadside motel in Vermont and built it into a $50 million network of boutique hotels across New England. She was the heart and soul of it all. My mother, Brenda, handled marketing, and my father, Mark, was the chief operating officer. They were supposed to be the ones who carried the torch, but my mom never really cared about the business itself. She loved the status, the image it gave her. Only 3 months after my dad left, Mom dropped a bombshell. She was getting remarried. His name was Scott, a polished, charming consultant who seemed to show up with nothing but promises of international expansion. He moved in almost immediately. He showered Mia with attention, playing games with her. Helping with homework while with me, I felt like I didn't exist. Just another piece of furniture in the room he didn't know what to do with. A few months later, they called me into the living room with big news. "We have something important to share," Mom said, with a grin plastered on her face. "Scott and I are heading overseas to manage the European expansion." My stomach sank. "What about me?" I asked, panic rising. "Mia is coming, of course," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "But you, Celine, don't be dramatic. You're starting your senior year of high school. There's no point in transferring you now." "Then, where am I supposed to go?" I asked, my voice trembling. Mom's laughter came, quick and sharp, like a cold wind. "You'll stay with Grandma. She's already agreed." It's settled. It wasn't a conversation. It was a decision made for me, and in that moment, I realized I was being discarded. That night, as I lay in bed, surrounded by boxes, none of which were mine, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had become a burden. But looking back, I know now it wasn't just about convenience. It was something deeper. My mom had always lived in Grandma Sharon's shadow. She resented how I loved the business, how I spent hours sketching hotel designs, how Grandma and I shared a language that she never could. Now, I see it clearly. By getting rid of me, she wasn't just making space for Scott. It was a selfish, jealous act. She was eliminating the one person who reminded her of everything she was not. 4 years passed. Living with Grandma Sharon was different. It was calm, stable, like breathing in fresh air after a storm. I immersed myself in my studies, particularly architecture, finding solace in the technical details of load-bearing walls and blueprints. My mother hardly contacted me, just the occasional text on Christmas and a missed call on my birthday. I learned not to expect anything. Then, on my 21st birthday, Grandma called me into her study. The room had always felt like a part of the original hotel-load mahogany furniture, leather-bound books, and the scent of history. Grandma had a serious expression on her face, one that made my stomach knot. "Celine," she said, her voice steady but commanding, "sit down." I obeyed, my heart racing. Was I in trouble? "I've been watching you for the past 4 years," she said, leaning in. "You don't just see these buildings. You understand them. You have my eyes, Celine. And you have your father's integrity." She slid a thick, leather-bound folder across the desk. Happy birthday. I opened it slowly, my hands trembling. Inside were deeds, trust documents, and shareholder certificates. I didn't understand. Grandma, what is this? It's the hotel chain, she replied simply. It's all yours. The entire $50 million legacy. I could hardly breathe. What? No, that's impossible. But Mom and Scott, they're in charge of the expansion. Grandma's voice cut through my confusion, clear and firm. A project they never fully authorized. But the heart of it, Celine, the properties, the brand, the soul of what I built, that's yours. It always has been. I just stared at her, unsure of what to say. But why? Why now? Why me? Grandma leaned back in her chair, and for the first time, I saw the weight of her decision in her eyes. You're asking why I waited? She said. It wasn't a question. I hoped Brenda would change. I gave her chances more than I should have. I watched her push Mark away. And then I watched her throw you aside like you didn't matter. She paused, taking a breath. I wanted to believe in her. But when they came to me with their reckless plan to risk everything I've worked for to mortgage the core hotels, I knew my hope was misplaced. This isn't just a gift, Celine. This is a correction. I won't let them destroy this family's legacy. That night, Grandma Sharon gave me one final piece of advice. Call your father, Celine. Talk to him not just as your dad, but as a consultant. He knows these hotels better than anyone. And there's more to the story than you think. It took me a week to work up the courage. We agreed to meet at a quiet coffee shop downtown. When I saw him, my heart ached. He looked older, more tired than I remembered, with streaks of gray in his hair. But when he saw me, his eyes brightened the same way they always did. The first few minutes were awkward, filled with small talk about my classes and the weather. Then I just couldn't hold it in anymore. I told him everything the last 4 years, the move, and finally, Grandma's gift. He just listened, his hands wrapped around his coffee mug. When I finished, he took a deep, shaky breath. Celine, he said, his voice thick with emotion. There are some things you need to know about the divorce. He told me how my mother, Brenda, had belittled him for years, how nothing he did was ever good enough, how she was obsessed with status while he just loved the craft of running a good hotel. But the affair, Dad? I finally asked. Mom always said you left. That you. His face hardened. The affair, he said, was not mine. It was hers. I stared at him. What, Brenda? She was seeing Scott long before I left. Celine, months before, I had my suspicions, but I didn't want to believe it. His voice was low. It all came to a head. Not just at home, but at work. That's the part no one knows. This was the secondary twist. I wasn't just kicked out of the house. I was kicked out of the company. What do you mean, Brenda and Scott? They framed me. They set up a series of transactions, a financial irregularity. They called it just small enough to be plausible, just large enough to look like gross incompetence or theft. They took it to the board, your grandmother's board. I was fired, Celine, disgraced. I felt sick. But why didn't you fight it? Why didn't you tell Grandma? Why did you just leave? He looked at me, and his eyes were full of that old familiar sadness and love. Because of you and Mia, he said quietly. To fight it would have meant dragging all of it into the public, the affair, the lies, the dirty business. She threatened to paint me as an unstable, thieving husband and use you two as leverage. I couldn't put you through that. I thought it would be easier if I just left. We sat in silence for a long time. It felt like a 50-pound weight had been dropped on my chest. My entire childhood, the narrative I had been fed, my father the failure, my mother the victim, it was all a lie. He wasn't the one who abandoned us. He was the one who was framed and banished. News that I was the new owner traveled fast, a little too fast. 2 days later, I was studying in the living room when the doorbell rang. I opened it, and my stomach dropped to the floor. It was my mother, Brenda, and Scott. "Celine, sweetheart." Mom burst forward, pulling me into a tight, suffocating hug. She smelled like expensive perfume and desperation. "Oh, darling, I've missed you so much. Look at you." She pushed past me into the house, Scott following right behind her, his smile as slick as ever. "Your mother has been just beside herself." "Celine, we heard the wonderful news." Mom spun around, her eyes wide and bright with a terrifying fakeness. "I was so surprised Grandma put all this on your shoulders. Baby, it's so much pressure. That's why we came right back." She grabbed my hands. "We have the perfect solution. You'll come live with us. We'll manage the company together, a real family business, just like it was supposed to be." I pulled my hands free. "No, Mom, I'm not going anywhere. I'm happy here. I have my school, and I have Grandma." Her smile didn't waver, but it tightened at the edges. "Well, if you don't want to move, that's fine. Scott and I were talking, we'll just move back here. We'll sell the place in the city. It'll be just like old times. Won't that be nice?" I just looked at her, the woman who had thrown me away like I was trash now standing in my grandmother's house, trying to claw her way back in. "No," I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through her fake excitement. "It's not going to be like old times." "Celine, don't be dramatic," she snapped, the sweetness disappearing. "This is a huge opportunity for us." "I have a question, Mom," I said. The room went still. I spoke to Dad. Her face froze, the smile, the bright eyes, it all just stopped. "What?" she whispered. "Why was he fired?" I asked, my voice getting stronger. "Why did you tell me he was a cheater when you were the one sleeping with Scott before he ever left? Why did you frame him? Why did you lie to me?" The mask didn't just fall, it shattered. Her face turned a dark, ugly shade of red. "How dare you?" she shrieked, her voice echoing in the high-ceilinged room. "You ungrateful little brat. After everything I did for you, you're going to stand there and take the word of that failure over mine? I gave you everything." She was screaming now, marching toward me, her finger pointed at my face. "This company, this house, it's mine. It was always supposed to be mine. That's enough, Brenda." Grandma Sharon's voice wasn't loud, but it hit my mother like a physical blow. She had been standing in the doorway to her office, watching. "Mother," Brenda whirled around. Tell this ungrateful child what she owes me." Grandma walked calmly into the room, her eyes never leaving my mother's. "The only thing she owes you, Brenda, is nothing. Respect is earned. You discarded her. You don't get to reclaim her now that she's valuable." Grandma stopped right in front of them. "You're not welcome here. And as for the company, my lawyers will be in touch about your attempt to mortgage the core hotel properties." Scott's face went completely white. "I think it's time for you to leave," Grandma said, her voice soft but more threatening than any scream. My mother just stared at her, speechless. I could see the rage, the humiliation, the panic all warring for control of her face. Finally, with a sound that was half sob, half growl, she turned and stormed out the front door. Scott practically ran to follow her. The door slammed shut, and the silence that filled the house was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. After that confrontation, Grandma Sharon was done giving chances. She hired a private investigations firm. A few weeks later, she called me and my dad into her study. The pie, a no-nonsense woman in a sharp blazer, was already there. On the table was a bound report. "It's worse than we thought," Grandma said, her voice grim. The investigator laid it all out. Scott wasn't just a bad businessman, he was a professional con artist. He had a history with different names in different states. He specialized in charming women with family money, convincing them to expand or invest in international projects, and then funneling the money into offshore shell corporations before disappearing. The European expansion he and my mother were so excited about was just his latest $7 million heist. And he was using my mother as his inside woman to mortgage my grandmother's legacy to fund it. I felt sick. So, she wasn't just his girlfriend, I whispered. She was his accomplice. My grandmother looked at me, her eyes full of a pain I hadn't seen before. It appears so, Celine, willingly or not. With the evidence of Scott's criminal history and my mother's complicity in a multi-million-dollar fraud scheme, my dad filed for full custody of Mia immediately. I insisted on being in the courtroom. It was hard to watch. My mother, Brenda, was on the stand playing the role of the victim perfectly. She cried, telling the judge how Mark had abandoned the family, how he was unstable, how he never cared. Her lawyer painted my dad as a failed executive with a grudge. Then it was our lawyer's turn. He didn't just show proof of my dad's stability. He didn't just show the alimony checks that Mom had cashed. He introduced the private investigator's report. He calmly read out Scott's criminal aliases. He detailed the fraud investigation in another state. He presented the bank records showing the attempts to mortgage the core hotels and the wire transfers Scott had already set up, co-signed by my mother. I watched my mother's face. The practiced tears dried up. The mask of the grieving victim dissolved. Her expression went from confusion to shock to pure, unadulterated rage. She started yelling, "This is ridiculous. It's a lie. They're poisoning you against me. He loves me." But the judge just banged his gavel, his face like stone. The truth, cold and hard and documented, was finally out. It was over in an hour. The judge granted my father full and immediate custody of my sister. Mia, he called Scott a predator and ordered a criminal investigation into both him and my mother. Brenda for conspiracy to commit fraud. I watched my mother completely collapse into her chair, a woman who had just realized, about 5 minutes too late, that all her lies had finally caught up with her. For a second, I almost felt pity. Almost, the collapse was fast. Scott, true to his nature, disappeared the day after the hearing, taking every last cent of my mother's personal savings with him. The final judgment in the fraud case and the family court was swift. My mother, Brenda, the woman who had always seen herself as the one who received money, was now ordered by a judge to pay child support to my father for Mia. The irony was devastating. A few weeks later, my dad called. His voice sounded tired but calm. "Hey, Celine. Just wanted to let you know, your mother showed up at my apartment today." My heart tightened. What? What did she want? "She wanted to make up," he said, the disbelief clear in his voice. She cried. Said she made a terrible mistake, that Scott tricked her, and that she wanted us to be a family again. I waited, holding my breath. "I told her no," he said firmly. "I told her that ship hadn't just sailed, it had sunk to the bottom of the ocean. I told her I would never, ever put you or Mia through that again." I let out the breath I was holding, and a wave of relief washed over me. "Good," I said. "Good for you, Dad." After we hung up, I sat in my room at Grandma's house, looking at the blueprints for my final college project. I used to think that family was something unbreakable, something defined by blood, something you were stuck with no matter what. But I've learned a hard lesson. Real family isn't about who you share blood with. It's about who's willing to bleed for you. It's the place you're healed, not the place you're constantly hurt. I realized that sometimes letting go of a toxic blood tie is the only way to find yourself. Life started to settle into a new, wonderful normal. I graduated from architecture school, top of my class. My dad, Mark, took over as the interim CEO of the hotel chain, and the business was finally thriving under someone who actually loved it. Mia moved in with him, and for the first time in years, she was just a happy, relaxed kid. Every Sunday, we all have dinner at Grandma Sharon's. Last week, I brought my final project. I unrolled the blueprints on the big dining room table. "It's a new concept," I said, my voice nervous. "A completely sustainable hotel using the principles I've been studying." Grandma, Mia, and Dad all leaned in. Dad looked over the plans, a slow smile spreading across his face. He looked up at me, his eyes shining with a pride that filled every broken piece of me. "This is the future, Celine," he said. I looked around the table at my grandmother, my father, and my sister. This wasn't the family I started with. It was broken and rebuilt and smaller, but it was real. It was mine.